Okay, so backup storage. I mean, there are many issues to be considered when end users are evaluating their options. Um, and I guess the first question is how easy is it or not, as the case may be, to really understand? I guess in simple terms, it's CAPEX and OPEX. There are other things as well to consider, but how easy is it to understand that before people do make what's quite an important investment decision?
Yeah, so I think the CapEx OpEx question is twofold. The first is, do people want to, if they're sitting on cash, they're always better off to use their cash because it's the best use of the money versus leaving it in an investment on the side. But if you don't have the cash, then you're forced to have to pay over time, which means you may want to do a lease. You may want to do subscription. You may want to do capacity-based pricing, which is pay by the terabyte. That's one thought about it is whether you want to pay up front or you want to pay over time, depending on what your cash position is. The second is accounting. Some organizations have CapEx budgets and they have OpEx budgets because they hit the customer's expense budgets differently. And sometimes the finance teams want X amount of money spent in OpEx and X amount of money spent in CapEx. So they will literally have CapEx and OpEx budgets for the IT departments and say, we'd rather have you buy this out of CapEx budget or buy this out of an OpEx budget. And that comes to accounting, not whether you have the cash or not, and whether you want to pay up front or over time. So there's two different reasons why people have these discussions around CapEx and OpEx.
Okay, and I guess also as well, there's various messages put out into the market, and some of the, I guess the sort of standard ones are, say, often people just say cloud backups less expensive than
Right.
on-prem storage. That's sort of just put out
Right.
there unchallenged, or that pay per terabit maybe is cheaper than capital equipment expenditure. So are those kind of statements helpful in any way, or do they just sort of cloud what you've already explained, in terms of how people make decisions?
So before I get into that, I need to do a little advertisement so that I have a little credibility. So I've been talking to IT data centers for 35 years. This is all I've done. And I've been the CEO of ExaGrid with backup storage for 20 years. So that's a long time of these kind of dialogues. I will tell you without a doubt, CapEx is your least expensive every time. Because typically in backup storage, you will keep the backup storage at least 6 years, sometimes 7, 8, and 9 years. Usually when we're replacing backup storage, whether that be any kind of primary storage sitting behind the backup application, or maybe some sort of deduplication appliance like a Dell Data Domain, we're replacing storage that's 7, 8, 9 years old. In subscription, if you look at subscription math, so let's start with that. Subscription math has a 2.5 year crossover point. So if you subscribe to software for 3 years, at 3 years, you are paying more for that software than if you paid up front for it for a perpetual license. You say, but then why do people want to do subscription for software? It's because they want the ability to change at a 3 year point. So much of the environment changes around you that the application you're using today may not work for you in 3 years if it doesn't support things that you need it to support. So people want the flexibility of subscription to change at the 3 year point. It is more expensive. If you decide to renew that software for year 4 and then 5 and 6, you way more pay for that software than if you paid for it up front. So in fact, at the 2.5 year point, that is when subscription equals perpetual. However, with storage, people always keep backup storage at least 6 years. So you wouldn't even consider subscription for backup storage. And why? You'll pay 2x when you subscribe than if you did CapEx. So if you paid $100,000 upfront CapEx, it'll cost you $200,000 at 6 year point, and at a 9 year point, $300,000. You're way overpaying for the storage. So you say, but so I don't want to do subscription. Then what do I want to do? Because I don't have the money to do CapEx. Well, then lease it. If you lease it, you may pay an extra 40% over the 3 years in interest, but now you're paying 1.4x the storage over, because at 3 years, you'll have paid for the storage through leasing, and you'll, for $1, buy the storage out, and you'll own the storage and can continue to use that storage. So if you think you're going to trade something out in, let's say, 3 years, it's kind of a push decision. If you think you're going to keep something 6 years, guaranteed CapEx is the way to go, or lease is the way to go. Think of it this way. At a 6 year point for backup storage, if CapEx was 1x, a lease is going to cost you 1.4x at 6 years. Subscription is going to cost you 2x. And then capacity, pay by the terabyte as you use it, is going to cost you 3x. You say, then wait a minute. Why is it then that people would even want to do capacity-based pricing? Well, that's because they don't understand the math. And usually when they do it, they end up going back to CAPEX. They end up converting it back because it becomes too expensive. Then you've got the fourth layer, which is the cloud. The cloud is the most expensive because, like with Azure and AWS, let's say they say it's a penny a gigabyte per month or $10 per month per terabyte. That's not what it costs. It costs about 3 times that because they charge you for ingress. They charge you for egress. They charge you every time you read a file. They charge you every time you delete a file. They charge you every time you overwrite a file, right? So it's like if you had a streaming service watching movies and your streaming service was $40 a month, then all of a sudden you got the bill and it was $500. And you say, what's that? Well, every time you push the pause button, we charge you 10 cents. Every time you stop the movie and restart the movie, we charge you 25 cents. And the next thing you know, it's not really $40 a month. So in summary, CAPEX is your cheapest, lease is your next cheapest if you can't afford the money up front for CAPEX, then subscription, then pay by the terabyte, then cloud. So it depends on, do you think you're going to swap something out in 3 years? Well, then you have more options to think about. But if you think like everybody does in backup storage, you're going to keep it 6 years, it's CAPEX and it's lease. I will summarize by saying we have almost 5,000 customers all around the world. Big companies, right? And all we see is CAPEX and lease. It's a rare day we see anything else because big companies know how to do that math.
And I'm also wondering, I know with public cloud it's the case, and maybe some of the others, once you're in there, it can be difficult to get out of there or to move to different, whether it's a different cloud or a different model. So again, would it be fair to say that if it's on-prem and it's under your control, it's easier to migrate to or upgrade your storage there than with one of the other models? You maybe think, okay, I want to change somewhere else, that there's potentially some headaches involved in moving from one of those other models. Is that right?
So I think the first question always is the customer deciding to continue to run their own data centers or just put everything in the cloud, right? That's the 1,000-foot decision. Once a customer has made that decision, if the data lives in the cloud, meaning the primary storage is in the cloud, the applications are in the cloud, well, then your backup has to be in the cloud because the data's in the cloud. If your data is on-prem, you've got an on-prem data center, which, as you know, everybody thought on-prem data centers were going to go away, and that hasn't even come close to the truth. In fact, there's a resurgence, right? We're all seeing a huge resurgence and everybody repatriating. So what's happening is if wherever I have the primary storage, that's where the backup storage has to go. And why? Because there's not enough bandwidth to do a backup every night across a WAN to be able to have your backup storage be someplace else. You just never see it. If the primary storage is on site, the backup storage is on site. What might be somewhere else is your disaster recovery, where you do some kind of deduplication to reduce the amount that you're going to send across the WAN and put your disaster recovery into the cloud or onto another data center you have, etc. We tend to notice smaller companies don't have second data centers. So they have to do the disaster recovery to some kind of MSP or cloud service. The bigger companies have second data centers, and they've done the math. They've done the math on the cost, and they know it's cheaper to put it in their second data center. They've done the math on time to recover. Time to recover is hours on-prem. It could be a month from the cloud, trying to drag it back out of the cloud, right? So I think there's, again, all of these scenarios you need to think about. You need to think about first, is all my data going to be in the cloud? Well, then my backup has to be in the cloud, and on-prem is gone. If my data is on-prem, my backup storage has to be on-prem, and then you just have to ask yourself, do I want my disaster recovery in the cloud or my disaster recovery in another data center? What we find most customers don't understand is they somehow think the cloud costs less, and it doesn't. And what I see 20 years here constantly is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 months into it, we get the phone call. I'm getting these huge cloud bills. I got to bring it back on-prem all the time because they don't know how to calculate it. They don't know how to figure it out. And then once they get that bill, and they see the bill 6, 7, 8 months into it, they have a heart attack. They have a heart attack, and then they bring it back. So you say, in summary, where does the cloud fit? The cloud is not going to replace the data center. The cloud is not going away. Everything has its place. I am going to have certain applications I don't know how to run. So I'm going to go to a SaaS provider for my NetSuite, my Concur, my Salesforce. I am going to have certain workloads I can't do on-prem. I can't do burstable compute on-prem. I can't have a bunch of computers sitting around doing nothing for 2 months. And then when I want to finally put together a video or compile some software code, I need burstable compute. And finally, I get to use those computers that are doing nothing that compute. I'm going to go someplace where there's a lot of compute that everybody can use. And when I need burstable compute, it's there. On the same side, it's far less expensive to run IT in your data center. So I think what you're going to see is people finally figuring out what workloads work better where. So I have workloads that are SaaS. I'm going to go to SaaS providers. My data is there with the SaaS provider. I might do my archive, not my backup data, but my archive data in the cloud and my burstable compute in the cloud. I'm going to do my Office 365 as a SaaS play in the cloud, but I'm going to keep all my other apps and my storage and my networking and my WANs and my switches on-prem. And I think everybody is still learning the math of that and still learning the pros and cons of adds, changes, moves, performance of that. And I think we went through this period from 2012 to 2022. Everything's going to the cloud, and that was just not even close to the truth. I think everybody now is starting to realize, right? I get my electricity from the electrical company and my water from the water company, and I get my cable TV from in the US, Xfinity, whatever. That one size doesn't fit all. You have to figure out what are your requirements and what's right for you. So I think you're going to see everybody be hybrid from this point forward.
Yeah, and to that point, as you say, I mean, clearly cost is significant for folks to consider. And then you've outlined some of the other things. I mean, flexibility, scalability, security, I guess, is the potential one these days, compliance and stuff. So as you say, I suppose the question is, how easy is it for someone to obtain all the necessary information to make a decision? I mean, is it possible to draw some general recommendations depending on sort of your situation, or is it very much every single user will have to, go through all the sums and the considerations as to what they, want to do themselves? So, yeah, how easy is it to do that yourself?
Right.
Or is there a shortcut, shall we say?
So I'm smiling because you hit a hot button of mine. I have my whole career tried to figure out how to shortcut that for customers and have not seen it yet. It's almost like being a human and you grow up, and when you're laying on your deathbed, you say, boy, I now know what I should have done in raising my kids. I know what I should have done to been a better husband. I know what I should have been to been a better worker at work, but it's too late. You're ready to die, right? So I think we learn, and what I call, you have to go through the rite of passage. So customers have to experience it. You show them the math. You show them how much more the cloud's going to cost. They don't believe it. Yet it's the factual math. A math you can't argue with. Michael J. Fox, the actor, once said he likes creativity, and he didn't like math because 1 + 1 is 2 every time.
Yep.
So the math is the math. 1 + 1 is 2 every time. They need to go through it. They have perceptions, they have beliefs, and they have emotions, and they need to go through it. And then they learn, just like we learn everything in life, by experiencing it. If we didn't, every teenager would go to us older people and say, tell me all the mistakes I'm going to make so I don't make them. The day that happens, I don't know if that ever is going to happen. They have to go through all the mistakes we went through to become grown-ups by themselves. So I don't think there's any shortcuts. I think you go through the rite of passage, you learn it, you figure it out, and you start to figure where it fits, and you start to make sense of it, and then everybody's experience. And we're seeing that happen now. We are seeing companies say, I now get that I don't get the performance of the cloud, or the cost of the cloud is too high, or I can't run these apps, I got to go to SaaS. I tried running CRM it was a disaster. Better off for me to go to Salesforce, right, than try to run my own CRM. So I think people figure it out through a lot of mistakes, and I think that is just humans.
But is it fair to say, though, people, because I guess everyone's looking for somebody to say to them, yeah, we'll sort it out for you, we'll tell you where to,
Sure.
how to do it, etc. But the reality is, if someone's giving you a sort of easy answer and it's all cloud or it's all
Right.
subscription, you should be very suspicious because, as you say, the hybrid world is pretty much where we've arrived at, and
Mhm.
therefore, an honest conversation would say, well, this is where we think we can help you, but you may
Right.
want need to go somewhere else
Right.
for certain other needs. Is that pretty much what people should expect, or can they really believe someone and say, yeah, we're going to look after all your storage backup needs, etc., and you don't have to worry about anything else?
Well, I think small companies go to their reseller, right? And their reseller sees a lot of organizations, so they have a wider view of it. They learn faster as a result, right? Because if you're one customer learning, but a reseller sees 50, their learning is accelerated. So they can bring value in that regard. If you're a very large corporation, you're going to go to the large global systems integrators, right? You're going to talk to HCL and Wipro and Tech Mahindra and Accenture and Kyndryl and Infosys and all of these other players. There's 7 or 8, or maybe 10 or 12 large cap Gemini, etc. that can help guide you because they're more like consulting firms, right? You also have the Deloittes and Touches and the KPMGs who specialize with consulting services. So I think bigger companies have more access to that. Smaller companies rely on the resellers, but there are people you can go to that have a lot more experience than just you yourself can have, right? That can help augment your own experience.
And those folks are very much objective, so they will create for you or might they themselves be slightly guilty of having
Yeah,
a
I
box
think
or
everybody's guilty of selling what they've got. So I think every customer needs to trust, but also verify, right? They need to look at it and say, is this person telling me to go with that because that's all they sell? Or are they representing every product and therefore they're more open? I've got Juniper routers and Cisco routers. So when I'm telling you go Cisco, it's not because I don't carry Juniper, because in this case, I think Cisco routers is the right answer. I carry Dell servers, HPE servers, Lenovo servers, and IBM servers. So, I'm not pushing you to, one or the other but for your situation, I think this is the right one. I do have them all. A joke I always make in IT is a painter and he comes to your house and your wife says, I want the kitchen to be blue. And all he has is yellow paint. And he says, no, no, you really got to use yellow paint. And she says, well, I want to go blue, so she doesn't hire him because all he has is yellow paint. The next painter comes in and he has both yellow and blue paint. And he says, you can go blue. I got blue. See, I got blue. But let me show you a little bit what yellow might look like. And because he has both, she's more open to listening. So he convinces her to go yellow. When you go out to his truck, what you see is 82 cans of yellow and 1 can of blue because he knows to get her to listen. He needs to say, I've got blue and I'll give you blue if you want it. But you really want to do the kitchen in yellow, and here's all the reasons. So you got to have both or all of the solutions to really be honest and ethical with everybody to say, let me find the right one for you, right? What's right for you based upon, what you need. When people don't sell products, right, that's usually easier for them, right? Because they don't sell products at all. They're a consultant and they're not pushing one product or another, hopefully. But you always got to watch out for that.
Okay, and maybe just finally, for ExaGrid yourselves, it'd just be good to understand the roadmap. If there's anything you can tell us about, what we can expect from you this year or a little bit further into the future. Any plan? I mean, whether it's just a general direction of travel or any
Mhm.
specific things that we can look out for.
Yeah, so I think first of all, just a little stop about where we are. We look at customers and say, what do they care about? They care about cost and backup storage. They care about ingest performance for a short backup window. They care about fast restores because they got to keep users productive. They care about scalability, so as their data grows, they can scale out without it, killing manageability or cost. They care about security, all of security, including a strong ransomware recovery story. That's just one element of security, right? That you've got to do all of the security. They care about no product obsolescence that forces them to stop using a product long before its useful life, right? So there's a long list of things they care about, and we obsess about every one of those because all we do is backup storage, right? Who we compete with, they sell 50 other products, including primary storage, and they throw it behind the backup app. Or they sell 50 other products, primary storage, and maybe they have a deduplication appliance like a Dell Data Domain, where but we look at that and we say, what are all the broken things with those? And then how do we fix that? From that perspective, everything we bring forward has to do with those things: cost, ingest performance, restore performance, scalability, security, disaster recovery, etc. We are just getting ready to announce what we call EKM, external key management, where customers are starting to say we want to be able to manage the keys for the data encryption at rest from a third party, application. So that's rolling out, and we're actually announcing that in the next week or so. We also are now supporting Flex appliances for net backup. More and more customers are saying we want to use ExaGrid storage, but we run our net backup software on Flex appliances from net backup. So now we have the OST plugin to work with that. You will see us begin to bring out some of the, and I won't mention names yet, but some of the newer backup applications that you see in the market, support for those. And in the fourth quarter of this year, so this is the one sort of pre-announcement I'll make, in the fourth quarter of this year, you will see us having an all SSD solution. And you might say an all SSD solution, boy, that's pretty expensive for backup. But there are organizations, depending on where they are, that can't get electricity, or the cost of electricity is killing them. So even though SSD, solid state, costs more, when you do the math over a longer period of time, the savings in power and cooling offsets the fact that the SSD costs more. So many customers are saying, I can't buy HDD anymore because I can't support the cost of the power and cooling. I need to go SSD. So we're going to have both HDD and SSD. We have HDD now. We'll have SSD in the fourth quarter of this year.
Okay, it's been great to chat, and some brilliant insights, obviously, into the intricacies of backup, shall we say, and what people need to understand. And then great to have that little sort of preview of what's going on from ExaGrid for the rest of the year. So really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this has been great. Thank you.
Thanks again.